Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Wednesday, September the 18th, 2024. Now, in today's tropical weather update, we are keeping an eye on the northwestern Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico for a possibility of a tropical storm or hurricane to develop out of a Central American gyre, or CAG for short, and we'll see if this goes into the western Gulf of Mexico, into the central Gulf, or into the eastern Gulf and impact Florida. So this is a zoomed out view on the GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. There's a link in the description below this video. And as we can see here, there's really not a whole lot going on. We have what is left with Gordon. This is now an area to watch. 50% chance in the next 7 days. That's going to remain out to sea. We're going to have to keep an eye, though, on the eastern main development region down the road. I know there's a lot to watch out there in the long term, but not in the short term. And then, of course, anyone living in the northwestern Caribbean, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, western Cuba, the Yucatan Peninsula, Florida, the Gulf Coast, really needs to be watching what may come up from Central America, known as our Central American gyre. So while there's not much to track now, there will be in the next 7 days. This is what it looks like on the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. Keep in mind, we have 2 areas to watch. One area not going to be a big problem, but it was once Tropical Storm Gordon that became a tropical depression, then a remnant low. Now is an area to watch. This has a 20% chance in the next 2 days and a 50% chance in the next week, so in the next 7 days. But all eyes are on deck over the northwestern Caribbean. That's where we have that area. And of course, people live in the Yucatan, people live in Jamaica, people live in the Cayman Islands, western Cuba, and even down there towards, say, Belize area. This has a 20% chance of tropical development in the next 7 days. So this has a low chance, but those chances will increase in days ahead. So now to the meat of this video, I want you all to please pay very close attention on what we're looking at here. We're going to be looking at all of the different reliable, deterministic global models here at showing where this Central American gyre will develop, what part of the gyre will focus that vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, and then who could be at risk of getting impacted. So we're going to be looking at the GEFS first, the Canadian, the European Artificial Intelligence, the ICON, and then the European Deterministic Forecast. So now what you're seeing here, of course, is the GFS model, the Global Forecasting System for the 12Z output. And what you're looking at here too is some great annotations that I drew up here for the video so you all understand with what we're looking at. And what you're seeing here is the color shaded. That's what we're going to look at first. This describes how much spin there is in the atmosphere. So the more spin, the more vorticity you get. That's tighter, that is more compact. You're going to get darker red shade colors, right? So you're going to eventually get black colors, which indicate extreme amounts of spin in the atmosphere. And that tells us that, oh, there's a hurricane, or there's a lot of low-level spin in the atmosphere to get something to consolidate. And then these wind barbs describe which way the wind is blowing from. So in this case, we have winds blowing from the east or from the southeast to the northwest over the Caribbean. And then, of course, you get winds out of the north here over the eastern seaboard, and then your height contours are in black. Those black lines, a topographical map of the atmosphere. So with that being well said, let's take a look here at the GFS model. This is for Saturday morning, and we can see not much going on out there at all. However, here is the beginnings of our Central American gyre. You can see that flow. They're spinning about in the southern Caribbean. That's where everyone is watching for this Central American gyre mischief to take place. Now, day 5, this is for Monday morning, September the 23rd. We can see that the Central American gyre definitely gets better organized. We have winds over the eastern Pacific coming in out of the westerly direction. Then the winds kind of curve around like this. So this gives me an idea that we do have a lot of spin in a broader envelope here. We're not seeing dark red colors here. They're more orange and yellow, which indicate the spin is there, it's weak, but it is defined, and what happens next will definitely be on the concerning side. Interesting, the GFS picking up something also near Bermuda here, maybe another system. We'll see if that eventually gets attention from the NHC. This is 5 days out and not a fantasy model run yet, this far out. Now going beyond that, let's go to day 6 for Tuesday morning, September the 24th. There is that system. We'll see if this remains consistent. It's been on the last 2 runs, but look at what goes on in the Caribbean, and then it gets into the Gulf. Take note, this is why I use this plot very much, because it gives us an idea which areas of spin there is. Now, this is a very fragile situation because, again, what part of the envelope here of the Central American gyre consolidates? We do not know exactly what part is going to consolidate, and that is going to matter a whole lot here. Okay, and that's why we're seeing wild outcomes. Some of the models are still going into Texas. Some of them are going into Louisiana. I mean, we're seeing a big spread here in the model guidance today. And it's disappointing. I wish we could have a set-in-stone deal that, oh, we know who's going to get hit, but we don't. We don't, and that's because these vorticity maximums right here, these areas of spin, these lobes of different areas, we just don't know which one is going to take the brunt or kind of steal the thunder from the others, okay? But what we do know is there is a circulation here that does develop within about 3 to 5 days, and that's why the NHC has an area out on that system. So now, once we go into, say, let's go to day 7. This is day 8. So this is September the 26th. And then day 8.5, this makes landfall on September the 26th, potentially. Again, there's a lot of variability here. If we look at the previous run, we can see how this is moving all over the place. I mean, yesterday's 18Z run, it was all the way in the Carolina coast. The previous run is way down here on the 12Z from yesterday morning. So we can see there is a lot of moving around, and we don't know exactly where this is going to consolidate, where it's going to move, and when is it going to make landfall. All we know is signals. Signals of, oh, the GFS has been showing something in the Gulf and in the Northwestern Caribbean, and that's what it's showing. Now, this is a fantasy run because this is beyond 10 days out, and this is about as far as I'm going to go, out to September the 28th. Shows this re-intensifying on the other side of Florida, but of course, that is an understatement or probably an overstatement because this is 10 days out and fantasy runs. I love the GFS when it just puts things random like that, oh, it's going to become a very intense hurricane and it stalls out there. We just don't know yet. Now, looking at the Canadian model, again, the same plot system, 850 millibar, our geopotential height, cyclonic vorticity, again, how much spin there is, and what our winds are like in the low levels at 5,000 feet. So looking at this from the Canadian perspective, you can see in about 5 days, let's go to day 5 for Monday morning, September the 23rd, more consolidated here. Okay, the GFS, if we go back and look at that one last time, we can see in 5 days, it is not very well intense. We're not seeing dark red colors versus on the Canadian, it's a little further south, a little more compact, and that's why we see these darker red colors. Now, what does that mean down the road? Well, let's go and look. This is day 5. This is day 6. This is day 7 right here. We have a strengthening tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico by Wednesday morning, September the 25th, and then it becomes maybe, I want to be careful with the choice of words here. This could still become a hurricane with winds of 75 miles an hour in the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see, look how dark red that is, that vorticity, that spin. That's what we look for as far as any consolidation that occurs. But again, where this consolidates is going to be important because that's going to affect the launching point. If this goes over here, it has lesser water time, versus if it launches here, it's going to have a little bit more water time, especially if it moves a little slower. Or if it does this and pinwheels and then goes back this way towards Texas, it has even more water time. So again, who is going to get impacted is to be announced. Now, of course, we want to look at the APHIS model. I call it the APHIS because it's the AI FIS model. So if you want to know a new term, you want to share this term with your family and friends, you can go ahead and do that. I call it the APHIS model. A and then IFS, in other words. So looking at the artificial intelligence Euro model here, this is not the deterministic Euro. I mean, this is the AI version of that. And this has proven really well in with tracking Debbie, not really Debbie, but Francine, as well as Ernesto, and as well as Gordon. So it's done pretty good here. Now, what does it show with this system? Well, it shows that the system does consolidate here somewhere potentially over, say, Central America, hence its name, Central American Gyre, as well as the Yucatan Peninsula. But what happens next here? This is day 7. So day 7 here for Wednesday early morning. Again, pretty much in the same area like the GFS and the Canadian model have it. So we know in somewhat good agreement that it's going to be somewhere in the northwestern Caribbean within this time frame by the middle of next week. And then it moves now into the western Gulf of Mexico. That is why, folks, we cannot assume that the GFS is going to be more consistent. The artificial intelligence has done pretty well, and unfortunately, it's showing us a strong tropical storm here and possibly getting close to a higher end tropical storm with winds of about 55 to 65 miles an hour here, more like 60 to 70 miles an hour here when we kind of do the range envelope forecast. But this is also not a high resolution model, so therefore we're going to add another additional 5 to 15 miles an hour on top of this. So when this makes landfall close to 60 miles an hour, potentially this is beyond 10 days. So again, use this with a grain of salt, with a lot of caution, and I'm trying to be very firm and very, what is the word am I looking at? I'm just trying to iterate the caution of these models when you go out beyond 10 days. Because this is, again, showing 60 miles an hour, but adding 10 to 15 onto it, we're looking at a 70 to 75 mile an hour system, since this is not a high-res model. It's not like the European high-res model at all. Now, looking at the ICON model, it shows something similar, but also a lot weaker, but similar to the artificial intelligence. Let's go into that. This is out to day 5. Again, this is where our system is. Pretty good confidence here that it is going to be somewhere in this general area. All right, but the ICON is a little faster, and we can see there is an elongated area of low pressure here by Wednesday morning next week, September the 25th. Take note, southeast winds here, easterly here, and northerly winds here. So we have this elongated elliptical-like circulation, not closed well. But it does strengthen a little bit. It tries to consolidate a little bit more. You can see more stronger westerly winds here. So it is showing something too, like the other models. Again, this would show winds here of about 30 to 40 miles an hour. So a tropical depression, or if not, a tropical storm on this particular model. But there's one more model that I wanted to show you, and that is the deterministic Euro model. Let's take a look at this one. This has been a very conservative model. This has not jumped to the conclusion that we have a hurricane in the Gulf. All right, so we're going to play this through. Now, this is a higher end model. This is not the artificial intelligence. And so we can see that the Central American gyre develops right over here, more over Central America, not off the coast here, okay, of say Belize and say Honduras. Instead, it consolidates over land. And so therefore, it still thinks it's not going to do much. And this is out to day 7. This is a day 7 forecast. You can barely see anything there. So this is also one of those possibilities that this just never consolidates at all. And that's why we use these different models, and we're walking through those in this video. So you can see the vorticity well stretched out here for the day 8 to day 10 time frame, and it just never gets its act together. And it's been like that on previous European model runs, has been consistent here at showing nothing big at all. But again, I really want to emphasize we don't look at just one model, and we look at a pair of different models. And there are 5 different global models out there to look at, which is really cool, right? So now looking at the upper level environment, why could this still become a strong tropical storm, or if not even a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico? Well, examining the 200 millibar upper level wind chart, so this is where jet planes fly at about 33, 36, 37,000 feet. And so we can see here, there's not a whole lot of wind here. So there's a very low amount of shear to deal with. We got some divergent flow. This is, by the way, a little over 5 days out. So we get divergent flow on top of the system, and that's how a system develops, right? Diffluence aloft. But look what happens. By the time we go into, say, day 7, we start getting outflow established in all, or pretty much in all quadrants. Not a whole lot of background westerly flow to shear this apart. And that's why the Canadian has been consistently showing that this could become a hurricane with pretty formidable outflow on the northern side of this system, with that trough that encroaches into the Midwest of the United States by Wednesday morning next week. So this would be September the 25th timeframe at showing a 979 millibar system. Now going forward, you can see really not much westerly flow. There is just a hair of that though encroaching, so maybe shear does increase just a little bit right before landfall. But unfortunately, that does not mean that the system weakens. We saw this with Francine. Francine intensified despite the increasing shear all the way up until landfall in Louisiana. So this could happen with this next system. This would be Helene if it gets named. I shouldn't even be pre-naming this far out because we don't know if it's even going to get named at all. But again, our letter H storm would be on the deck of cards possible. Even our letter I. This could be Helene or Isaac, depending on what goes on off of Africa with that system that I'm about to show you soon. But then the wind shear really picks up and the system really falls apart over land because land interaction and the increasing shear. And you can see this on the shear vector forecast, taking note that the shear is very light up until landfall, then the shear slowly begins to pick up. Now, you're looking at all these red colors and say, well, David, how's the shear very light? These are shear vectors. So we're seeing outflow shear vectors here in all quadrants, which indicate that there's virtually no shear, and all of this shear is mainly outflow from the hurricane. Now I'm going far and beyond with my production here in today's video as far as the GEFS and the European ensemble forecast, a range of possible different outcomes. So I figured this out. The GEFS ensemble has 31 different members that run the ensemble and 51 different members that run the European ensemble. So again, the GFS has 31 different possible outcomes and the Euro has 51. Now what we're looking at here is, of course, the system consolidates, say it does do that, and most of the ensembles actually do indicate that this is an average, not an average actually, my bad, but most of the members show consolidation here in the Northwestern Caribbean within about, say, 6 to 7 days, and that seems to kind of come to pass with the Canadian indicating that too. But on the as we go forward down the road, let's go out to 180 hours, we start seeing a big split in the ensemble. We have one member, 978, off, say, Delray Beach, Florida, and then we have another pair of group of model members indicating a tropical storm or hurricane in the central or eastern Gulf of Mexico. So again, we can see why there's a lot of uncertainty here, and it just gets more uncertain than that. These members are much faster, and we have still a member down here, 201 hours out for Thursday next week. We could theoretically have this move into the Gulf by Thursday next week. That's according to the ensemble here, and that's a 969 millibar system. It's a more intense system, and it does try to strengthen it to 962 millibars to even 958 millibars within about, say, 10 days. But again, that's very far out, and that's why we use these ensembles. And still a pair of ensemble members picking up still over Florida with a tropical depression or storm over that area. Now, looking at the European ensemble, still pretty aggressive, still thinking that there is consolidation here. Surprising that the deterministic operational model not picking up on this, but its ensembles are. So that's why we still look at this. And look, it still shows, especially right here, a 976. That's pretty strong. Then we got a 988. We got a few others over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. And that moves on shore, perhaps over the Big Bend of Florida within, say, Wednesday to Friday next week. But again, this is there are a lot of uncertainty in a range of possible outcomes over here, all the way back here to the southwestern portion of the Gulf. But yeah, there is a signal here, and that's why we really got to pay attention to this. There's a lot of members still picking this up over the next 10 days. Now, what does this look like on our spaghetti plot? Well, this is a look at the GEFS ensemble, putting everything together. We can see there is definitely a strong signal here for a tropical storm or maybe a hurricane to develop over the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico. That's according to most of the ensemble members here from the GEFS. Now, again, we're not going to talk about this system very much coming off of Africa, but there is a growing signal for that to become our next named storm, perhaps beyond, say, the 10-day time frame. And the NHC will probably be having to highlight an area out here within the next 2 to 3 days, perhaps, as there is growing signal on that. Now, looking at the European ensemble spaghetti plot, let me zoom this in so you all can see. We can clearly still see this. We did not get a new update. Okay, we just got an update from our ensemble prediction system from the Euro here. Spaghetti plot showing still a signal here for a tropical storm, if not even a hurricane. These red tracks do indicate hurricane intensity pressures. And then, of course, this growing signal. Wow, a lot of model members picking that up coming off of Africa. And we will see where this goes eventually. We have a big ridge of high pressure that will eventually build to the north of the system. So there's a possibility that this actually goes west, or this might just go out to sea to the west-northwest. Now, really quickly, I want to show you all the velocity potential anomaly. I showed this in my last few videos, and a lot of you really like these maps that I do provide. By the way, this is courtesy of weathermodels.com. And what we're seeing here is the favorable environment. Is there any rising motion in the atmosphere, right? These blue colors, these green colors indicate lots and lots and lots of rising motion. A favorable MJO environment is coming over the Atlantic and over the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean over the next 16 days. This is according to our ensemble from the GEFS. A lot of sinking motion over the Central Pacific and the Western Pacific, and that is why the Western Pacific is going to be closing down for business for a little while, because all this sinking motion, dry air, a lot of wind shear, going to keep things suppressed. So what we're seeing here is September 26th. This is the 26th. This is October 1st. This is October 6th. This is October 11th, October the 16th, October the 21st. So basically, throughout the middle of October, favorable environment over the Atlantic here. It's been showing this for a while now with extreme amounts of upward motion. There's 3 different areas, and that is why even so the GFS and some other models are not indicating a barrage of activity. That could be an understatement as we transition into this favorable environment. Remember, we're seeing unfavorable conditions now. That quickly transitions. Again, on the 26th, we've been saying this for a while, the 26th and beyond, where you have a big favorable in MJO coming with a convective coupled Kelvin wave as well. Even the European ensemble is pretty bullish with this. Look at all this blue and green over in the Atlantic side. For the thumbnail for reference, the Atlantic here, the Caribbean over here, and look at all of this upward motion. That is why I am pretty confident we're going to be we're going to have to keep an eye on the tropics at least through the first full week of October, between the 22nd, the 26th of September through the 8th or the 9th of October, because all this favorable environment that is coming. Now, to add more concern to all of this, sea surface temperature anomalies are pretty crazy warm right now. Over the Caribbean, over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, we're seeing sea surface temperature anomalies anywhere between about 1.5 degrees to as much as 2.5 degrees above average. And when we look at this with an actual sea surface temperature perspective, water temperatures along the Louisiana coast are recovering pretty quickly. We're almost up to 29 degrees Celsius. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we were only at 27 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is upper 70s to lower 80s. So they're recovering pretty quickly. But look at these red anomalies off the Florida coast, also over the Bay of Youth, in, say, western Cuba, and over the northwestern portion of Caribbean and much of the Gulf of Mexico, seeing sea surface temperatures anywhere between about 85 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, looking at the upper ocean heat content in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Caribbean, very concerning. I mean, these red colors, folks, and I don't like to hype things up very often unless it really needs to be hyped up. In this case, I don't care if people say I'm scaring and fear-mongering. This upper ocean heat content over here in the northwestern Caribbean is absolutely stupendously, crazily above average. I mean, all these red colors here, dark red colors, are off the charts. That's 200 units. But anyways, I sure hope you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Wednesday, September the 18th, 2024. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your family and friends on social media. You guys are doing a great job at supporting the channel, at getting this out to a very big audience by sharing this and also leaving a comment and also liking the video as well. Almost 800 likes on my last video, so thank you all for partaking in that. All right. But anyways, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. I'll be back with you more tomorrow on the Tropics.